Neville Goddard, 5 lessons. Lesson 5, remain faithful to your idea. Tonight, we have the 5th and last lesson in this course. First, I shall give you a short summary of what has gone before. Then, since so many of you asked me to elaborate further on lesson 3, I shall give you a few more ideas on thinking fourth dimensionally. I know that when a man sees a thing clearly, he can tell it, he can explain it. This past winter in Barbados, a fisherman whose vocabulary would not encompass 1,000 words told me more in 5 minutes about the behavior of the dolphin than Shakespeare with his vast vocabulary could have told me if he did not know the habit of the dolphin. This fisherman told me how the dolphin loves to play on a piece of driftwood, and in order to catch him, you throw a wood out and bait him as you would bait children, because he likes to pretend he is getting out of the water. As I said, this man's vocabulary was very limited, but he knew his fish and he knew the sea. Because he knew his dolphin, he could tell me all about their habits and how to catch them. When you say you know a thing but you cannot explain it, I say you do not know it, for when you really know it, you naturally express it. If I should ask you how to define prayer and say to you, how would you through prayer go about realizing an objective? Any objective. If you can tell me, then you know it. But if you cannot tell me, then you do not know it. When you see it clearly in the mind's eye, the greater you will inspire the words which are necessary to clothe the idea and express it beautifully. And you will express the idea far better than a man with a vast vocabulary who does not see it as clearly as you do. If you have listened carefully throughout the past 4 days, you know now that the Bible has no reference at all to any persons that ever existed or to any events that ever occurred upon earth. The authors of the Bible were not writing history. They were writing a great drama of the mind, which they dressed up in the garb of history and then adapted it to the limited capacity of the uncritical, unthinking masses. You know that every story in the Bible is your story. That when the writers introduce dozens of characters in the same story, they are trying to present you with different attributes of the mind that you may employ. You saw it as I took perhaps a dozen or more stories and interpreted them for you. For instance, many people wonder how Jesus, the most gracious, the most loving man in the world, if he be a man, could say to his mother what he is supposed to have said to her as recorded in the 2nd chapter of the Gospel of St. John. Jesus is made to say to his mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" John 2:4. You and I, who are not yet identified with the ideal we serve, would not make such a statement to our mother. You and I, who are not yet identified with the ideal we serve, would not make such a statement to our mother. Yet here was the embodiment of love saying to his mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" You are Jesus, and your mother is your own consciousness. For consciousness is the cause of all. Therefore, it is the great father-mother of all phenomena. You and I are creatures of habit. We get into the habit of accepting as final the evidence of our senses. Wine is needed for the guests, and my senses tell me that there is no wine. And I, through habit, am about to accept this lack as final, when I remember that my consciousness is the one and only reality. Therefore, if I deny the evidence of my senses and assume the consciousness of having sufficient wine, I have in a sense rebuked my mother, or the consciousness which suggested lack. And by assuming the consciousness of having what I desire for my guests, wine is produced in a way we do not know. If I deny the evidence of my senses and assume the consciousness of having sufficient wine, I have in a sense rebuked my mother, or the consciousness which suggested lack. And by assuming the consciousness of having what I desire for my guests, wine is produced in a way we do not know. You must deny the evidence of your senses if you are to win, gain, become the assumption you are after, whatever it is. Your senses are lying to you. I have just read a note here. Excuse me. I have just read a note here from a dear friend of mine in the audience. Last Sunday, he had an appointment at a church for a wedding. The clock told him he was late. Everything told him he was late. He was standing on a street corner waiting for a streetcar. There was none in sight. He imagined that, instead of being on the street corner, that he was in the church. At that moment, a car stopped in front of him. My friend told the driver of his predicament, and the driver said to him, "I'm not going that way, but I will take you there." My friend got into the car and was at the church in time for the service. That is applying the law correctly. Non-acceptance of the suggestion of lateness. Never accept the suggestion of lack. You only have to turn on your social media craze or your TV and see the suggestion of lack coming at you at the speed of light in 50 friggin' thousand different dimensions. Are you going to accept any of that? Why it's coming at you like that? I have no idea, and I don't care. I'm not trying to sell that here. I'm trying to sell the fact that you, by the tiniest bit of effort, can make an impression on your subconscious and stop the world from impressing your subconscious, and you beget what you want to become. You beget what you, I am that I am, whatever that is you want to be. Ignore the noise from without. Without is out in the world, full of its streaming reels and videos and cat videos and blah, 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 blah. The noise just continues as if it's the ocean overwhelming you. You have to ignore your senses. Forget about the consciousness of lack, period. This is trying its best because it's shock and awe to fill you and get you to respond, which if you are paying attention to how you are reacting, then you know you need not react because it's all. What's the old saying I love? I believe nothing I hear and only half of what I see. Even that is a large amount to take on board. But if you're not going to do it, someone else is going to do it for you. If you're not going to make the impression on your own subconscious, someone else is happily filling in that void, and therefore you're getting what their wares are selling. Not your desire, but their desire. There's no reason to blame anybody for anything. They're doing what they're doing because you're not using your imagination. But now, after all these classes, you are. Non-acceptance of the suggestion of lateness. Never accept the suggestion of lack. Never. Never. In this case, I say to myself, what have I to do with thee? What have I to do with the evidence of my senses? Bring me all the pots and fill them. In other words, I assume that I have wine and all that I desire. Then my dimensionally greater self inspires in all the thoughts and the actions which aid the embodiment of my assumption. It is not a man saying to a mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" It is every man who knows this law who will say to himself, when his senses suggest lack, "What have I to do with thee? Get behind me." I will never again listen to a voice like that. I will never again listen to a voice like that. Because if I do, then I am impregnated by that suggestion, and I will bear the fruit of lack. If you are not using your imagination, someone else is happily stepping up with their wares and putting it right where you are not putting your imagined beautiful self. Whatever it is that you desire. We turn to another story in the Gospel of St. Mark where Jesus is hungry. And seeing a fig tree, it is not a man saying to a mother, did I read this? We turn to another story in the Gospel of St. Mark where Jesus is hungry. And seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. Mark 11:13 and 14. And in the morning as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. Mark 11:20. What tree am I blasting? Not a tree on the outside. It is my own consciousness. I am the vine. John 15:1. My consciousness, my I amness, is the great tree. And habit once more suggests emptiness. It suggests barrenness. It suggests 4 months before I can feast. But I cannot wait 4 months. I give myself this powerful suggestion that never again will I even for a moment relieve that it will take 4 months to realize my desire. The belief in lack must, from this day on, be barren and never again reproduce itself in my mind. Very, very important right here, man. Listen to this. What tree am I blasting? Not a tree on the outside. It is my own consciousness. I am the vine, quotes John 15:1. My consciousness, my I amness, is the great tree. The habit once more suggests emptiness. Habit. The habit. The habit you haven't changed yet, which we are now changing. The habit once more suggests emptiness. It suggests barrenness. It suggests 4 months before I can feast. But I cannot wait 4 months. I give myself this powerful suggestion that never again will I even for a moment relieve that it will take 4 months to realize my desire. Never again. Never again. I have it now. The belief in lack from this day on be barren and never again reproduce itself in my mind. It is not a man blasting a tree. Everything in the Bible takes place in the mind of man. The tree, the city, the people, everything. There is not a statement made in the Bible that does not represent some attribute of the human mind. They are all personifications of the mind and not things within the world. Consciousness is the one and only reality. There is no one to whom we can turn after we discover that our own awareness is God. For God is the cause of all, and there is nothing but God. You cannot say that a devil causes some things and God others. Listen to these words. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings to open up before him the two-leaved gates, and the gate shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by name, am the God of Israel. Isaiah 45:1, 2, and 3. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Isaiah 45:7. I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their host I have commanded. It's actually have I commanded. I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their host have I commanded. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all his ways. He shall build my city, and he shall let go my captives. Not for price nor reward, saith the Lord of hosts. Isaiah 45:12 and 13. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. Isaiah 45:5. Read these words carefully. They are not my words. They are the inspired words of men who discovered that consciousness is the only reality. If I am hurt, I am self-hurt. If there is darkness in my world, I created the darkness and the gloom and the depression. I did that. If there is light and joy, I created the light and joy. There is no one but this I amness that does all. You cannot find a cause outside of your own consciousness. Your world is a grand mirror constantly telling you who you are. As you meet people, they tell you by their behavior who you are. Your prayers will not be less devout because you turn to your own consciousness for help. I do not think that any person in prayer feels more of the joy, the piety, and the feeling of adoration than I do when I feel thankful, as I assume the feeling of my wish fulfilled, knowing at the same time it is to myself that I turned. In prayer, you are called upon to believe that you possess what your reason and your senses deny. When you pray, believe that you have, and you shall receive. When you pray, believe that you have, and you shall receive. See it as done. The Bible states it this way: Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, forgive, if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. But if ye do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive your trespasses. Mark 11:24, 25, 26. That is what we must do when we pray. If I hold something against another, it is a belief of sickness, poverty, or anything else. If I hold something against another, be it a belief of sickness, poverty, or anything else, I must loose it and let it go. Not by using words of denial, but by believing him to be what he desires to be. Remember my example in the crosswalk of the person jogging and walking by, working out, physically becoming fit in the new year resolution, etc. Any effort on that part. I just saw 2 joggers today already. And I can tell as jogging does not look fun to me. It's like this work, and then the person stops and goes, "Oh my gosh, this is work. This is brutal." And I just imagine lovingly, that's what I do. That's what I do. What is it you are doing? I'm not sitting there saying, "Oh, that looks horrible." I'm sitting there saying, "I am healthy. Look how healthy I am now." As I am them, I imagine lovingly that I am them, saying, "I am healthy. I am fit. My goals are met." That's what I do at the traffic light. Did it twice today already. That is what we must do when we pray. If I hold something against another, be it a belief of sickness, poverty, or anything else, I must loose it and let it go, not by using words of denial, but by believing him to be what he desires to be. In that way, I completely forgive him. Remember the word forgiveness in Neville language, our new language, is to imagine lovingly. Forgiveness means imagine lovingly. In that way, I completely forgive him. Get this definition down. I changed my concept of him. I changed my concept of him. I had aught against him, and I forgave him. Complete forgiveness is forgiveness. If I do not forget, then I have not forgiven. Forget the Sabbath. It is done. It's finished. Thank you. Isn't it wonderful? If I do not forget, then I have not forgiven. I only forgive something when I truly forget. I can say to you until the end of time, I forgive you. But if every time I see you or think of you, I am reminded of what I held against you, I have not forgiven you at all. Forgiveness is complete forgetfulness. You go to a doctor and he gives you something for your sickness. He's trying to take it from you. So he gives you something in place of it. Give yourself a new concept of self for the old concept. Give up the old concept completely. Completely. A prayer granted implies that something is done in consequence of the prayer which otherwise would have not been done. Therefore, I myself am the spring of action, the directing mind and the one who grants the prayer. Anyone who prays successfully turns within and appropriates the state sought. You have no sacrifice to offer. Do not let anyone tell you that you must struggle and suffer. You need not struggle for the realization of your desire. Read what it says in the Bible. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks or of lambs or of the goats. When ye come to appear before me, who hath required that at your hand to tread my courts? Bring no more vain obligations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons and Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot endure iniquity and solemn assembly. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. Isaiah 1:11 through 14. Wow. Ye shall have a song as in the night when a holy solemnity is kept, and gladness of heart, as when one goeth with a pipe to come into the mountain of the Lord, to the mighty one of Israel. Isaiah 30:29. Sing unto the Lord a new song and his praise from the end of the earth. Isaiah 42:10. Sing, O ye heavens, for the Lord hath done it. Shout, ye lower parts of the earth. Break forth into singing, ye mountains, O forest, and every tree therein. For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob and glorified himself in Israel. Isaiah 44:23. Therefore the redeemed of the Lord shall return, and come with singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. Isaiah 51:11. The only acceptable gift is a joyful heart. What makes your heart sing with joy? Is that becoming married? Is that being in a relationship? Is that becoming wealthy? Is that giving to your family and your friends and your relatives, etc., etc.? Is that becoming healthy? Is that being one of good health? Being expressive in your physicality? Without a worry, with reckless abandon? The only acceptable gift is a joyful heart. Come with singing and praise. That is the way to come before the Lord. Your own consciousness. Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and you have brought the only acceptable gift. All states of mind other than that of the wish fulfilled are an abomination. They are superstition and mean nothing. When you come before me, rejoice, because rejoicing implies that something has happened which you desired. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful? Thank you. Isn't it wonderful? Come before me singing, giving praise, and giving thanks, for these states of mind imply acceptance of the state thought. Put yourself in the proper mood and your own consciousness will embody it. If I could define prayer for anyone and put it just as clearly as I could, I would simply say, it is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. End of quote, period. It is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That's the art of prayer. If you ask, what do you mean by that? I would say, I would feel myself into the situation of the answered prayer, and then I would live and act upon that conviction. I would try to sustain it without effort. That is, I would live and act as though it were already a fact, knowing that as I walk in this fixed attitude, my assumption will harden into fact. Time does not permit me to go any farther into the argument that the Bible is not history. But if you have listened attentively to my message these past 4 nights, I do not think you want any more proof that the Bible is not history. Apply what you have heard and you will realize your desires. Now, I know from experience that this can seem like a daunting task. What do you mean, let myself die, that I may become the new self and live again? What about all these things that I like here? What about all these little comforts, habits? Then you have to ask yourself, is giving that up and letting that die worth this which you desire? Because desire is never going to stop from within you. It's always going to be whatever it is. It's going to change when you're here. The desire now is to be happily married, in love, in a relationship. Here, you're here single and you're not in love, not in a relationship. You make the impression, you become in love, become in a relationship. Are you going to miss this? Why the heck would you miss this? What is it that you're so attached to that you're not willing to give up? Especially when you have the desire inside of you that won't stop nagging you. It won't stop nagging you until you make this impression and become this new you. What is it you are addicted to in the old self that you're not letting go of? So these are the questions. And, next section. And now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it come to pass, ye might believe. John 14:29. Many persons, myself included, have observed events before they occurred. That is, before they occurred in this world of 3 dimensions. Since man can observe an event before it occurs in the 3 dimensions of space, then life on earth proceeds according to plan. And this plan must exist elsewhere in another dimension and is slowly moving through our space. If the occurring events were not in this world when they were observed, then to be perfectly logical, they must have been out of this world. And whatever is there, capitals there, to be seen before it occurs here, capitals here, must be predetermined from the point of view of man awake in a 3-dimensional world. Yet the ancient teachers taught us that we could alter the future, and my own experience confirms the truth of their teaching. Therefore, my object in giving this course is to indicate possibilities inherent in man, to show that man can alter his future, but thus altered, it forms again a deterministic sequence starting from the point of interference, a future that will be consistent with the alteration. The most remarkable feature of man's future is its flexibility. The future, although prepared in advance in every detail, has several outcomes. We have at every moment of our lives the choice before us which of several futures we will have. There are 2 actual outlooks on the world possessed by everyone, a natural focus and a spiritual focus. The ancient teachers called the one the carnal mind and the other the mind of Christ. We may differentiate them as ordinary waking consciousness, governed by our senses, and a controlled imagination governed by desire. We recognize these two distinct centers of thought in the statement, "The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them because they are spiritually discerned." 1 Corinthians 2:14. Remembering a couple videos ago, a handful, no pun, I burned my finger on the oven grate I mentioned. I immediately revised that I was actually using the oven mitt to push the shelf and not my hand. I was busy in the kitchen. I did some revision while my finger was under cold water. Three times that I was seeing myself push the grating with the mitt. Then, after leaving my hand out of the water, I felt the pain. I grabbed one ice cube, sat on the table, and revised at least 2 more times while the ice cube melted, a very small ice cube, melted on my finger. And I showed on video the blister. It was a blister, but after that ice melted and I revised, I think I might have revised 5 times that I was using the mitt, not my hand, the mitt, to push the grate back in. I got off the table, and I had a lot of duties going on at once. I was making water, I was cooking these hamburgers, I was doing all these things at once, as I like doing this in the kitchen. The pain was gone. Once I got up off the table, the pain was gone. No pain ever happened. Then I showed my finger on the video that it had a blister that was there, but I never felt pain ever again. The next day after that video, I took a small safety pin and I popped that blister and got the pus out of it and wiped it up and cleaned it up. And ever since then, the blister has basically turned to what a burn might look like when it's healing. The skin never came off per se, but the blister, I got rid of the pus, and the skin went back to the hand, to my finger, excuse me. But this morning and yesterday, it looked like an actual burn, but I have never felt any bit of pain after doing the revision. I'm letting it be whatever it is. That when I revised that I pushed in with the mitt, then my spiritual self did the revision. My natural self is experiencing what it would experience in its nature. The nature of healing, the body is so wonderfully, miraculously amazing. I revised my spiritual self out of the pain experience, doing the revision. The pain experience, although might have been experienced by the natural man, the one who did the burning, because spiritually I wouldn't make a mistake because I'm going to revise it. The natural events occurring after the revision by my spiritual self, they happen naturally. They just heal. The body's repairing itself. It's using things like cholesterol inside. It's doing these wonderful healing properties to bring this repair work under reconstruction. Wonderful, amazing. But my spiritual self did the revision. My natural self is doing the healing. I've never felt one iota of pain from this burn past what I said when I had the ice cube on it. Okay, let's find out where we are. We recognize these two distinct centers of thought in the statement, "The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them because they are spiritually discerned." 1 Corinthians 2:14. The natural view confines reality to the moment called now. The natural view confines reality to the moment called now, capitals N-O-W. To the natural view, the past and future are purely imaginary. The spiritual view, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. The past and future are a present whole to the spiritual view. What is mental and subjective to the natural man is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. Now let's get a picture of that. You know my example. We're going to give a couple things here. To the natural first, we're going to do the natural, and then we're going to do the spiritual. To the natural man, his present is separated from his past and his future. This is how the natural man perceives. Here we go. We recognize these two distinct centers of thought in the statement, the natural man receives. Wait, hold on a second. The natural view confines reality to the moment called now. The natural view confines the moment of reality to the moment called now. To the natural view, the past and future are purely imaginary. These are imaginary outside of the present of now. They are imaginary. The spiritual view, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. What is mental and subjective to the past and future are a present whole to the spiritual view. So in the spiritual view, the present, also known as now, is part of the whole called the past and called the future, which to me, these are an illusion. But to the spiritual view, that is all contained here, because to the spiritual view, anything to the spiritual mind you put into your present moment in your now is reflected here in the past and is reflected here in the future. To the spiritual mind, this is all in contents at once, all encompassing. To this present natural, this is the spiritual view. To the natural view, these are separate concepts. These are separate imaginary places. You think in the natural mind that the past made you what you are today, and that you are going to make what you are in the future. In actuality, spiritually minded, in the present moment, the way you put into your mind and or your feelings, your objective in life to become that which you want to be, and you know this, it affects what you see in your past. It affects what you see as your future. And you know that this dynamic, it's a ever-changing dynamism. It's a dynamic change. It's never sitting still moment by thought by moment. As you change in your now, you are changing what you can even see and you know it. You are changing what you think of the future and you know it. It's all at once in a different sort of imaginary, as he described it, as saying now. This is the natural view and this is the spiritual view. You know, when you do revision, you're doing it in the present moment and you're changing the past. You're recreating it or you're creating it again new, and it's supporting the new self-concept, the new self-concept of what you're going to become. In this case over here, the natural-minded person is not even going to be aware of what revision is, nor could they even understand it, because they believe this is a concrete thing that happened that made them this. They believe this imaginary place is as real as where they are here, when in actuality, it is not as real. It is as flexible to the spiritual-minded man. This is you. You're not on this channel if you're over here. Or if you are and you're climbing out of there, fine, welcome to the party. Grab yourself a drink. It's cozy in here. No worries. Eat and drink without price. The natural view confines reality to the moment called now. To the natural view, the past and future are purely imaginary. The spiritual view, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. The past and future are a present whole to the spiritual view. What is mental and subjective to the natural man is concrete and objective to the spiritual man. The habit of seeing only that which our senses permit renders us totally blind to what otherwise we could see. To cultivate the faculty of seeing in the invisible, we should often deliberately disentangle our minds from the evidence of the senses and focus our attention on an invisible state, mentally feeling it and sensing it until it has all the distinctness of reality. Earnest, concentrated thought focused in a particular direction shuts out other sensations and causes them to disappear. Earnest, concentrated thought focused in a particular direction shuts out other sensations and causes them to disappear. We have only to concentrate on the state desired in order to see it. The habit of withdrawing attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on the invisible develops our spiritual outlook and enables us to penetrate beyond the world of sense and to see that which is invisible. If I am, again, imagining lovingly for the homeless lady with her 2 children, or the gal walking across the crosswalk, doing the brutal jogging and the new fitness routine, am I not focusing on the world of the invisible? It's the 4th dimension. I see it clearly in the 4th dimension with 4th dimensional viewpoint. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. Romans 1:20. This vision is completely independent of natural faculties. Open it and quicken it. A little practice will convince us that we can, by controlling our imagination, reshape our future in harmony with our desire. Desire is the mainspring of action. We could not move a single finger unless we had a desire to move it. No matter what we do, we follow the desire which at the moment dominates our minds. When we break a habit, our desire to break it is greater than our desire to continue the habit. When we break a habit, our desire to break it is greater than our desire to continue the habit. It's desire that you're using. The desires which impel us to action are those which hold our attention. A desire is but an awareness of something we lack and need to make our life more enjoyable. Desires always have some personal gain in view. The greater the anticipated gain, the more intense is the desire. There is no absolutely unselfish desire. Where there is nothing to gain, there is no desire and consequently no action. The spiritual man speaks to the natural man through the language of desire. Nice. The key to progress in life and to the fulfillment of dreams lies in ready obedience to its voice. Unhesitating obedience to its voice is an immediate assumption of the wish fulfilled. To desire a state is to have it. As Pascal has said, you will not have sought me had you not already found me. Love it. Man, by assuming the feeling of his wish fulfilled and then living and acting on this conviction, alters the future in harmony with his assumption. Assumptions awaken what they affirm. As soon as man assumes the feeling of his wish fulfilled, his 4th dimensional self finds ways for the attainment of this end, discovers methods for its realization. I know of no clearer definition of the means by which we realize our desires than to experience in imagination what we would experience in the flesh were we to achieve our goal. This imaginary experience of the end with acceptance wills the means. Great sentence. The 4th dimensional self then constructs with its larger outlook the means necessary to realize the accepted end. The undisciplined mind finds it difficult to assume a state which is denied by the senses. But here is a technique which makes it easy to call things which are not seen as though they were. That is, to encounter an event before it occurs. People have a habit of slighting the importance of simple things. But this simple formula for changing the future was discovered after years of searching and experimenting. The first step in changing the future is desire, capitals, desire. That is, define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Just know it, period. Go into your closet, shut the door, and ask yourself, what do I want? What would make me happy? And then listen with your eyes closed. It will rise up. It will float right to the top like cream on milk. Know definitely what you want. Second, construct an event which you believe you would encounter following, capitals, following the fulfillment of your desire, an event which implies fulfillment of your desire, something which will have the action of self-predominant. Third, immobilize the physical body and induce a condition akin to sleep by imagining that you are sleepy. Lie on a bed or relax in a chair. Then, with eyelids closed and your attention focused on the action you intend to experience in imagination, mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now. You must, Neville saying must, always participate in the imaginary action, not merely stand back and look on, but feel that you are actually performing the action so that the imaginary sensation is real to you. It is important always to remember that the proposed action must be one which follows the fulfillment of your desire. Your desire. Also, you must feel yourself into the action until it has all the vividness and distinctness of reality. For example, suppose you desire promotion in office. Being congratulated would be an event you would encounter following the fulfillment of your desire, naturally. Having selected this action as the one you will experience in imagination, immobilize the physical body, induce a state akin to sleep, a drowsy state, but one in which you are still able to control the direction of your thoughts, a state in which you are attentive without effort. Then visualize a friend standing before you. Put your imaginary hand into his. Feel it be solid and real. Feel it to be solid and real, and carry on an imaginary conversation with him in harmony with the action. You do not visualize yourself at a distance in point of space and at a distance in point of time, being congratulated on your good fortune. Instead, you make elsewhere here, capitals here, and the future now, capitals now. The future event is a reality now in a dimensionally larger world, and oddly enough, now in a dimensionally larger world is equivalent to here in the ordinary three-dimensional space of everyday life. The difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action as though you were on a motion picture screen is the difference between success and failure. You have to do this first person. It can't be from the outside. It has to be first person experience, from what you would see your arms. The difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. Then, with eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel yourself actually climbing it. Right now, do it. Close your eyes. If you're not driving, climb the ladder in your imagination. What does it feel like to climb this ladder? What does it feel like to climb back down? Finish the operation, climb it again. What does it feel like grabbing these rungs, moving your feet, having 3 points of contact before you move one limb? You got two hands on a rung, you have both feet on the ground, you put your left foot on the first rung, then you move the hand, the other foot, all these things, this becomes a natural sequence. The difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action as though you were on a motion picture screen is the difference between success and failure. Cannot be stressed too many times, that one sentence. Put a clip on that and replay it 4,000 times. I don't know, 4,000 times? 4,003 times. The difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. Then, with eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel yourself actually climbing it. Desire, physical immobility, bordering on sleep, and imaginary action in which self-feelingly predominates here and now. Here and now, capitalized, are not only important factors in altering the future, but they are also essential conditions in consciously projecting the spiritual self. When the physical body is immobilized and we become possessed of the idea of to do something, if we imagine that we are doing it here and now, caps, and keep the imaginary action feelingly going right up until sleep ensues, we are likely to awaken out of the physical body to find ourselves in a dimensionally larger world with a dimensionally larger focus and actually doing what we desired and imagined we were doing in the flesh. I'm here to tell you, yes, it will happen. And how is it going to happen? You go to sleep in this multidimensional reality. I'm going to cross terms with the Seth material. Each one of these represents a multidimensional you. This is you falling asleep, not having climbed the ladder, but imagining climbing the ladder. This is you waking up in this multidimensional reality, climbing the ladder that morning because you have to get something off a higher shelf. You could have easily not made the impression and you'll stay here. But all these multidimensional realities exist. All of his works are done. Every multidimensional reality is waiting for you to change a thought because it opens up once you change that thought. It happens so fast and with such succession, you do not see the seams. You do this in your waking reality all the time, all day long. That's an advanced concept. Let's bring it back to what we're trying to do here. Just get this started. Your reality changes. I'm just going to give you another commercial. Each moment you change your thought, your reality changes. Each thought is a new reality. Every single thought is a new reality. That's for later. We're going to get into that and drill down into that later. But for right now, let's bring it back home. Let's just get this pump primed, get this locomotion moving. You go to sleep with that on your mind. You wake up in the multidimensional new world of that as an experience. Period. Plain and simple. You have to start somewhere. All we're doing is becoming conscious of these maneuvers. We're already doing these maneuvers. But whether we awaken there or not, we are actually performing the action in the fourth dimensional world as you're falling asleep, climbing that ladder, if it's the ladder. And will in the future reenact it here in the third dimensional world. Remember, the third dimension is a shadow. You're doing it in the fourth dimension as you fall asleep. The shadow you, the one you wake up in, is just going to perform the shadow of the operation you did while you were falling asleep in the fourth dimension. Experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action to condense the idea, which is to be the object of our meditation, into a single act, and to reenact it over and over again until it has the feeling of reality, also known as the feeling of naturalness. Otherwise, the attention will wander off along an associational track, and hosts of associated images will be presented to our attention, and in a few seconds, they will lead us hundreds of miles away from our objective in point of space, and years away in point of time. If we decide to climb a particular flight of stairs, because that is the likely event to follow the realization of our desire, then we must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should the attention wander off, bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs. And keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctness of reality. The idea must be maintained in the field of presentation without any sensible effort on our part. We must, with the minimum of effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Drowsiness facilitates change because it favors attention without effort. But it must not be pushed to the state of sleep, in which we shall no longer be able to control the movements of our attention, but a moderate degree of drowsiness in which we are still able to direct our thoughts. A most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and then, in a relaxed and sleepy state, repeat over and over again like a lullaby any short phrase which implies the fulfillment of your desires, such as, thank you, thank you, thank you, until the single sensation of thankfulness dominates the mind. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Speak these words as though you addressed a higher power for having done it for you. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. It doesn't, just do it. Just do it. If, however, we seek a conscious projection in a dimensionally larger world, then we must keep the action going right up until sleep ensues. Experience in imagination with all the distinctness of reality. Experience in imagination with all the distinctness of reality what would be experienced in the flesh were we to achieve our goal, and we shall in time meet it in the flesh as we met it in our imagination. Feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions, presumed to be true. Because assumptions, though false, if persisted in, until they have the feeling of reality, will harden into fact. To an assumption, all means which promote its realization are good. To the assumption, it influences the behavior of all by inspiring in all the movements, the actions, and the words which tend toward its fulfillment. To understand how man molds his future in harmony with his assumption, by simply experiencing in his imagination what he would experience in reality, were he to realize his goal, he must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world, for it is to a dimensionally larger world that we go to alter our future. The observation of an event before it occurs implies the event is predetermined from the point of view of man in the three-dimensional world. Therefore, to change the conditions here in the 3 dimensions of space, we must first change them in the 4 dimensions of space. Man does not know exactly what is meant by a dimensionally larger world, and would no doubt deny the existence of a dimensionally larger self. He is quite familiar with the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, and he feels that if there were a 4th dimension, it should be just as obvious to him as the dimensions of length, width, and height. Now, a dimension is not a line. It is any way in which a thing can be measured that is entirely different from all the other ways. That is, to measure a solid 4th dimensionally, we simply measure it in any direction except that of its length, width, and height. Now, is there another way of measuring an object other than those of its length, width, and height? Time measures my life without employing the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height. There is no such thing as an instantaneous object. Its appearance and disappearance are measurable. It endures for a definite length of time. We can measure its lifespan without using the dimensions of length, width, and height. Time is definitely a 4th way of measuring an object. The more dimensions an object has, the more substantial and real it becomes. A straight line which lies entirely in 1 dimension acquires shape, mass, and substance by the addition of dimensions. What new quality would time, the 4th dimension, give, which would make it just as vastly superior to solids as solids are to surfaces and surfaces are to lines? Time is a medium for changes in experience, for all changes take time. The new quality is changeability. Observe that if we bisect a solid, its cross-section will be a surface. By bisecting a surface, we obtain a line, and by bisecting a line, we get a point. This means that a point is but a cross-section of a line, which is in turn but a cross-section of a surface. which is in turn but a cross-section of a solid, which is in turn, if carried to its logical conclusion, but a cross-section of a fourth-dimensional object. Fourth-dimensional object. We cannot avoid the inference that all three-dimensional objects are but cross-sections of fourth-dimensional bodies. We cannot avoid that. The inference that all three-dimensional objects are but cross-sections of fourth-dimensional bodies. Which means, when I meet you, I meet a cross-section of the fourth dimension, of the four-dimensional you. The four-dimensional self that is not seen. To see the four-dimensional self, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life from birth to death and see them all as coexisting. Seth used to do that when he used to talk to the students in Jane's ESP class. He would tell them straight up, I see all of your probable realities at one moment. Every single one of these lives that you are living in your one life are all probable versions of you. Seth would talk to an ESP class student. He would see the entirety of that student, but then come back and focus on the question the student had and then answer it to that probable self. But he would see all of yourself, all of its existences in their entirety, and then bring the narrow focus right down to where the question was asked and answer to that student that specific question and that specific multi-dimensional person that asked. Of the many that one person is, the same as you. You're going to change many, many, many more times in your life from each thought. Those are all your four dimensionals. To see the four-dimensional self, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life from birth to death and see them all as all coexisting. My focus should take in the entire array of sensory impressions which you have experienced on earth, plus those you might encounter. Like I said, multidimensionals. I should see them not in the order in which they were experienced by you, but as a present whole. Because change, in caps, is the characteristic of the fourth dimension. I should see them in a state of flux as a living, animated whole. Now, if we have all this clearly fixed in our minds, what does it mean to us in this three-dimensional world? It means that if we can move along time's length, we can see the future and alter it if we so desire. Repeating this little tiny paragraph. Now, if we have all this clearly fixed in our minds, what does it mean to us in this three-dimensional world? It means that if we can move along time's length, we can see the future and alter it if we so desire. This world, which we think so solidly real, is a shadow out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. It is an abstraction from a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world. A more fundamental world abstracted from a still more fundamental and dimensionally larger world. And so on to infinity. Oh, boy, get a grip of that. Wow. Must repeat. This world which we think is so solidly real is a shadow, out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. It is an abstraction from a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world. A more fundamental world abstracted from a still more fundamental and dimensionally larger world. And so on to infinity. For the absolute is unattainable by any means or analysis, no matter how many dimensions we add to the world. Man can prove the existence of a dimensionally larger world by simply focusing his attention on an invisible state and imagining that he sees and feels it. If he remains concentrated in this state, his present environment will pass away, and he will awaken in a dimensionally larger world where the object of his contemplation will be seen as a concrete, objective reality. I feel intuitively that were he to abstract his thoughts from this dimensionally larger world and retreat still farther within his mind, he would again bring about an externalization of time. He would discover that every time he retreats into his inner mind and brings about an externalization of time, space becomes dimensionally larger. Man, there's a definite expansion happening. And he would therefore conclude that both time and space are serial, and that the drama of life is but the climbing of a multitudinous dimensional time block. Scientists will one day explain why there is a serial universe, but in practice, how, in caps, how we use this serial universe to change the future is more important. To change the future, we need only concern ourselves with two worlds in the infinite series: the world we know by reason of our bodily organs, and the world we perceive independently of our bodily organs. I have stated that man has at every moment of time the choice before him which of several futures he will have. But the question arises, how is this possible when the experiences of man awake in the three-dimensional world are predetermined, as his observation of an event before it occurs implies? This ability to change the future will be seen if we liken the experiences of life on earth to this printed page. Man experiences events on earth singly and successively in the same way that you are now experiencing the words of this page. Imagine that every word on this page represents a single sensory impression. To get the context, to understand my meaning, you focus your vision on the first word in the upper left-hand corner and then move your focus across the page from left to right, letting it fall on the words singly and successively. By the time your eyes reach the last word on this page, you have extracted my meaning. But suppose I'm looking at the page with all the printed words thereon equally present. You decided to rearrange them. You could, by rearranging them, tell an entirely different story. In fact, you could tell many different stories. A dream is nothing more than uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking, or the arrangement of both past and future sensory impressions. Man seldom dreams of events in the order in which he experiences them when awake. He usually dreams of two or more events which are separated in time, fused into a single sensory impression. Or else he so completely rearranges his single waking sensory impressions that he does not recognize them when he encounters them in his waking state. For example, I dream that I delivered a package to the restaurant in my apartment building. The hostess said to me, "You can't leave that there." Whereupon the elevator operator gave me a few letters and I thanked him for them. He in turn thanked me. At this point, the night elevator operator appeared and waved a greeting to me. The following day, as I left my apartment, I picked up a few letters which had been placed at my door. On my way down, I gave the day elevator operator a tip and thanked him for taking care of my mail, whereupon he thanked me for the tip. On my return home that day, I overheard a doorman say to a delivery man, "You can't leave that here. You can't leave that there." As I was about to take the elevator up to my apartment, I was attracted by a familiar face in the restaurant, and as I looked in, the hostess greeted me with a smile. That night, I escorted my dinner guests to the elevator, and as I said goodbye to them, the night operator waved goodnight to me. By simply rearranging a few of the single sensory impressions I was destined to encounter, and by fusing two or more of them into single sensory impressions, I constructed a dream which differed quite a bit from my waking experience. When we have learned to control the movements of our attention in the four-dimensional world, we shall be able to consciously create circumstances in the three-dimensional world. We learn this control through the waking dream when our attention can be maintained without effort. For attention minus effort is indispensable to changing the future. Attention minus effort is indispensable to changing the future. Grab a hold of that phrase. Oh, We can, in a controlled waking dream, consciously construct an event which we desire to experience in the three-dimensional world. The sensory impressions we use to construct our waking dream are present realities displaced in time or the four-dimensional world. All that we do in constructing the waking dream is to select from the vast array of sensory impressions those which, when they are properly arranged, imply that we have realized our desire. With the dream clearly defined, we relax in a chair and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep, a state which, although bordering on sleep, leaves us in conscious control of the movements of our attention. Then we experience in imagination what we would experience in reality were this waking dream an objective fact. In applying this technique to change the future, it is important always to remember that the only thing which occupies the mind during the waking dream is the waking dream. The predetermined action and sensation which implies the fulfillment of our desire. How the waking dream becomes physical fact is not our concern. Our acceptance of the waking dream as physical reality wills the means for its fulfillment. Let me again lay the foundation of prayer, which is nothing more than a controlled waking dream. 1. Define your objective. Know definitely what you want. Have you done this? If you haven't done this, just stop everything. Go back, close your eyes, shut the door to the closet. I am breathing, chill out, and just ask, what is it I desire? What would make me happy? Happiest. Let it float to the surface of your mind. It will start nagging you because it won't go away. Go to sleep with the same question. If you're not going to stop and meditate, fall asleep with the question on your mind. When I wake up, the first thing that floats to the top of my mind is my answer. What is my greatest desire? I will know the first thing when I wake up in the morning that is my objective, my desire, my wish. It is definitely what I want. The first thing that rises to the top of my mind when I wake up. Number 2, construct an event which you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. Something that will have the action of self-predominant. An event which implies the fulfillment of your desire. 3, immobilize the physical body and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. Then mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action until the single sensation of fulfillment dominates the mind, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now, so that you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh, were you now to realize your goal. Experience has convinced me that this is the easiest way to achieve our goal. 1, 2, 3. The easiest. Know what you want. Construct an event you believe will be after the fulfillment of the event or your new experience. Then chill out, lay down, immobilize the body. See yourself in the action. However, my own many failures would convict me were I to imply that I have completely mastered the movements of my attention. But I can, with the ancient teacher, say, this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize. Philippians 3:13, 14. This one thing I do, going to sleep, making this impression, forgetting those things which are behind, over here, and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize. Forgetting these things. Do not look back. Wow. Again, I want to remind you that the responsibility to make what you have done real in this world is not on your shoulders. Do not be concerned with the how. You have assumed that it is done. The assumption has its own way of objectifying itself. All responsibility to make it so is removed from you. This part you don't have to worry about. There is no work involved. You go to sleep, make the impression, and your work is done. You're in the Sabbath. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful? Thank you. There is a little statement in the book of Exodus which bears this out. Millions of people who have read it or have had it mentioned to them throughout the centuries have completely misunderstood it. It is said, steep not a kid in its mother's milk. King James Version, thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. Exodus 23:19. Unnumbered millions of people understanding this statement to this very day in the enlightened age of 1948 will not eat any dairy products with a meat dish. It just is not done. They think the Bible is history. And when it says, steep not a kid in its mother's milk, milk and the products of milk, butter and cheese, they will not take at the same time they take the kid or any kind of meat. In fact, they even separate dishes with which to cook their meat. But you are now about to apply it psychologically. You have done your meditation and you have assumed that you are what you want to be. Consciousness is God. Your attention is like the very stream of life, or milk itself that nurses and makes alive that which holds your attention. In other words, what holds your attention has your life. Throughout the centuries, a kid has been used as a symbol of sacrifice. You have given birth to everything in your world, but there are things that you no longer wish to keep alive, although you have mothered and fathered them. You are a jealous father that can easily consume, like Cronus, his children. It is your right to consume what formerly you expressed when you did not know better. Repeat this sentence. You are a jealous father that can easily consume, like Cronus, his children. Here's the sentence. It is your right to consume what formerly you expressed when you did not know better. Now, you are detached in consciousness from that former state. You are not that former self. Period. It was your kid. It was your child. You embodied and expressed it in your world. But now that you have assumed that you are what you want to be, do not look back on your former state and wonder how it will disappear from your world. For if you look back and give attention to it, you are steeping once more that kid in its mother's milk. In other words, you're breathing life back into it. You're looking, after you become this and you're breathing life back into this kid is dead. Let the dead bury the dead, for crying out loud. Become the new you. Stay here, steep here, not the kid that is now dead. Not the kid you gave life to over here, which you are now expressing. The old. You must not look back, and you must not give mother's milk. You must not feed it any more of your attention. It's the only way to change. This is the hump you must get over. Past, past, past. You think it's a concrete, objective thing that exists next to where you are now in your present. When in actuality, spiritually, you know in your present, in your now, that this is an illusion. This changes when you change this. You change into your new present and your new now. You now have a new past that goes with this. If you look back over here, then you're leaving spiritual discernment and you're going back over here into the natural man and you're going over here and dwelling on the past, which made you. No. Do not say to yourself, I wonder if I am really detached from that state, or I wonder if so-and-so is true. Give all your attention to the assumption that the thing is so, because all responsibility to make it so is completely removed from your shoulders. You do not have to make it so. It is so. You appropriate what is already fact, and you walk in the assumption that it is. And in a way that you do not know, I do not know, no man knows, it becomes objectified in your world. Do not be concerned with the how, and do not look back on your former state. No man, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. Luke 9:62. No man, having put his hand on the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. Simply assume that it is done and suspend reason. Suspend all the arguments of the conscious three-dimensional mind. Your desire is outside of the reach of the three-dimensional mind. Assume you are that which you wish to be. Walk as though you were it. And as you remain faithful to your assumption, it will harden into fact. End of the 5 lessons. Which was your favorite? Oh my goodness. I'm going to give my favorite right here because I put a post-it here. My third way of praying is simply to feel thankful. If I want something, either for myself or another, I immobilize the physical body. Then I produce the state akin to sleep, and in that state, just feel happy. Feel thankful. Which thankfulness implies realization of what I want. I assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and with my mind dominated by this single sensation, I go to sleep. I need do nothing to make it so, because it is so. My feeling of the wish fulfilled implies it is done. Thank you. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful?